mid-19th century, a woman standing in her own parlor could be inches away from a fatal accident. As her dress brushes so close to an open hearth, the fabric sways directly into the path of the flame. But because of the enormous structure holding that fabric outward, she has no physical sensation of the heat. The fire can catch and climb the dress before she even realizes she is burning. High fashion, sheer flammable fabrics, and the open flames used to heat and light Victorian homes created a violent combination. The silhouette defining mid-century elegance effectively turned the Victorian parlor into a lethal enclosure. To understand how this hazard became so common, we have to look at what women endured before this era to achieve that fashionable bell-shaped profile. Volume used to require layers of tiered, stiffened petticoats woven from horsehair and linen. It was a hot, unhygienic, and crushing weight to carry around all day. The solution arrived in 1856 with the invention of the cage crinoline. It was a marvel of the industrial age, utilizing mass-produced spring steel. As we can see in this 1860s photograph, the steel hoops were joined by fabric tape. This collapsible skeleton easily supported the widest skirts without the need for a dozen burdensome undergarments. Inside that cage, a woman's legs were entirely unencumbered. For the first time in generations, she could walk with a degree of mobility the old petticoats had made impossible. The steel cage provided a practical, mechanical alternative to the physical burden of the old fabric layers. Along with physical comfort, the crinoline granted women a literal expansion of space within the public sphere. Looking at this diagram, you can see the sheer displacement radius of a peak 1860s crinoline. When a woman wore this on a sidewalk, an omnibus, or a crowded square, men were forced out to the margins to make way. This territorial shift triggered immediate backlash. The press mocked women as ironclad naval warships, publishing endless cartoons complaining about the threat to men's safety. Women largely ignored the ridicule. The undeniable physical boundary the hoops provided kept unwanted contact at a distance. By forcing the public sphere to accommodate their diameter, women used their clothing to establish a physical boundary that men were required to respect. But that newfound volume came with a dark anatomical trade-off. Wearers suffered a massive reduction in spatial awareness. The steel skeleton pushed layers of cotton far beyond the body's natural nerve endings, creating a sensory dead zone. If the skirt's edge brushed against a fireplace or a low gaslight, the nervous system registered nothing. The historical record is full of the consequences. In August 1862, an 18-year-old named Sarah Padley stood too close to a heat source. Her muslin dress caught a light over her cage, resulting in fatal burns. The jury at her inquest officially ruled her death accidental through wearing crinoline. This specific hazard spared no social class. Both of writer Oscar Wilde's half-sisters died from burns after their crinolines caught fire at a ball. And in 1861, Fanny Longfellow, wife of the famous poet, suffered severe, fatal burns when her dress caught fire in her own study. The extreme proximity of these wide skirts to open parlor fireplaces made the home itself a precarious environment. The crinoline liberated women from the weight of petticoats, but it built an invisible, lethal perimeter, turning everyday domestic heat into a sudden, direct danger. Because the cage was affordable and worn by all classes, the danger followed working women out of the parlor and onto the factory floor. Here, sprawling skirts completely broke down the safety protocols of the industrialized Victorian workplace. In 1864, an Irish factory worker walked past a revolving steam shaft. The rigid hoops of her crinoline pressed her dress outward, catching the fabric in the machinery and fatally pulling her into the mechanism. Because of its rigidity, the crinoline allowed factory machinery to snare a worker from a distance. The press eagerly seized on these horrific accidents. Sensational reports circulated claiming that up to 3,000 women burned to death from crinoline fires in a single decade. In London, Coroner Edwin Lancaster launched a loud public crusade against the garment. He believed that graphic press coverage of his inquests would finally force women to abandon the fashion. Writers and commentators weaponized these tragedies by constantly highlighting the hazards of the crinoline. The male-dominated press attempted to shame women out of their expanded silhouettes and regain control of the crowded public streets. While the 3,000 death toll was likely inflated for propaganda purposes, The underlying reality of the brutal danger was completely authentic. The tragedy of the crinoline fire was co-opted into a gendered battle, blurring the line between a genuine concern for public safety and an attempt to reassert control over how women moved through the world. Despite the coroner's hopes that these brutal deaths would end the fad, the cage crinoline remained popular. It only faded in the late 1860s, when the fashionable silhouette naturally shifted volume to the back of the dress. Victorian women read the newspapers. They knew about the fires, the mangled factory workers, and the coroner inquests, yet they consciously chose to step into the cages anyway. For the vast majority of these women, the physical freedom provided by the cage was worth the risk. The steel cage finally provided Victorian women with literal space of their own, even if that space remained dangerous in a world lit by fire.